Some mysteries in Skyrim linger not because they are hidden, but because the world itself refuses to explain them. Scattered across the wilderness are places where the air changes subtly, where the wind carries tones that do not match its movement, and where something ancient seems to hum quietly beneath the surface. Travelers often describe moments where the world feels aware, as though watching from just beyond the tree line. One such place lies deep within the forests south of Falkreath, where stones sit arranged in strange patterns that no known tribe has claimed responsibility for. The stones are smooth, weathered, and too precisely placed to be accidental. When rain falls on them, they emit faint chime-like sounds that echo softly through the trees. Many have camped there overnight, only to wake feeling as though unseen figures stood watch over them until dawn. To the east, near Darkwater Pass, lies a pool of water that glows faintly in the moonlight. The glow is not magical in any typical sense. No spell triggers it, no enchantment rests beneath the surface, and yet the water shimmers with a soft silver tone when the night is clear. Locals avoid the pool, claiming that those who look too long into its depths dream of places they've never been, towering cliffs wrapped in mist, ancient forests where ghostly shapes wander between the trees, and a sky glowing with unfamiliar constellations. Scholars who visited the pool reported feeling an uncomfortable pull, as though the water wished to show them something just out of reach. The glow fades entirely during daylight, leaving nothing but a still surface that betrays nothing of the strange light it holds. North of the Pale, snowdrifts gather in ways that defy the natural flow of wind. Along a particular ridge, the snow forms perfect spirals large enough to walk through. Travelers who step into these spirals describe feeling a subtle vibration beneath their feet, as though the snow rests on something alive. The formations appear overnight and vanish just as quickly when storms return. Ancient Nordic legends suggest that spirits of wind once danced across these mountains, leaving signs of their movement in spiraling patterns. Whether these formations are remnants of those old stories or signs of something else lingering in the mountains, no one knows. The spirals continue to form regardless of who notices them. Far beneath the ruins of Winterhold lies a network of tunnels untouched by magic or excavation. These tunnels were discovered only recently, revealed by a sudden collapse during a blizzard. Explorers who ventured inside found walls carved with symbols that do not match any known Nord, Dwemer, or Falmer script. The symbols seem to shift subtly when looked at directly, changing shape at the edges of sight. Torches burn strangely within the tunnels, flickering in patterns that do not match air movement. Some claim to have heard distant footsteps echoing down hallways that lead to dead ends. Others reported feeling watched, though no creature, human or otherwise, left tracks in the dust. The strangest part is that the tunnels seem to rearrange themselves. Hallways appear longer on the way out than the way in, and chambers shift slightly in structure between visits. Whatever carved these tunnels left behind an enigma untouched by time. In the swamps of Hallmarch, fog sometimes moves in deliberate patterns that resemble figures walking side by side. These shapes drift silently above the stagnant water, dissolving when approached. Locals insist these are not spirits of the dead, but echoes of past events, memories repeating themselves through mist. People have reported hearing muffled voices, indistinct but emotional, rising from the fog like distant murmurs. Animals grow restless in these moments, backing away from the shapes with ears lowered. Some scholars believe the swamp's peculiar conditions trap sound in unusual ways, creating illusions born from wind and water. But the consistency of the shapes, the way they move with intention, their silhouettes distinct against the fog, suggests something deeper rests within that marshland, something that prefers to remain in quiet motion. High in the mountains of the throat of the world, there are stone ridges that vibrate faintly when the sky clears after heavy snowfall. The vibrations follow a specific rhythm, not random, not wind-driven, but measured, like distant chanting muffled by layers of rock. When the sun rises and touches the stone, the vibration stops instantly. Only those who approach during the night feel the low hum beneath their fingertips. Graybeards who have meditated on these ridges insist that the mountain remembers more than mortals understand. They believe the stones echo ancient words once spoken by tongues that no longer exist. Whether these vibrations are remnants of long-forgotten shouts or something older still buried beneath the mountain remains unknown, but their presence creates a sense of timelessness that even seasoned climbers find difficult to describe. In certain caves throughout the Reach, faint markings glow when struck by moonlight. These markings are invisible during the day, and torches cannot coax them into visibility. Only pure moonlight reveals their shapes: smooth curves that resemble flowing water, spirals that twist in unnatural directions, and symbols that appear to move slightly in the corner of one's vision. The Reachmen tell stories of ancient spirits who carved their knowledge into stone using magic that predates the Nord's arrival. They claim the glowing runes are warnings left by those spirits to protect their burial grounds. But even the Reachmen admit they do not understand the symbols. When explorers attempted to trace them with charcoal, the markings seemed to shift subtly on the stone, as though unwilling to be captured. Deep in the forests near Solitude, travelers have stumbled upon trees that grow in perfect alignment with one another, forming long corridors of natural archways. These trees bend inward at precise angles, making paths that feel almost architectural. The ground beneath them is unusually flat, clear of roots and fallen branches. Birds avoid these corridors, refusing to perch within them. Animals walk around the arches, never through them. Those who dare to enter sometimes report a heavy silence, as if the air thickens and absorbs all sound. The archways stretch farther than expected, bending in patterns that seem too deliberate to be natural. When followed to their end, they often lead to empty clearings marked only by smooth stones embedded in the ground, stones worn nearly featureless, as though countless feet once passed over them. Above the northern coast, strange lights appear beneath the surface of the Sea of Ghosts. Fishermen traveling near the shoreline have witnessed glowing shapes moving slowly beneath the water, soft blue forms that pulse in steady patterns. The shapes do not behave like creatures. They move too uniformly, too purposefully, forming rows or clusters that drift in silence. Some believe these lights are remnants of ancient magic cast into the sea during forgotten battles. Others think they may be reflections of phenomena occurring deep beneath the waves. Whatever they are, the shapes vanish completely when storms approach, as though hiding from something invisible. Even the bravest sailors hesitate to follow the lights, sensing a presence that does not welcome intrusion. On quiet nights in Whiterun, the sky above Dragon's Reach occasionally flickers with pale lines of light, thin streaks that shimmer for a heartbeat and then disappear. These lights appear too low to be stars and too sharp to be lightning. Court wizards have studied the phenomenon for years, but its cause remains elusive. Some say the lights are echoes of ancient battles between dragons, imprinted on the sky like scars of forgotten power. Others believe Dragon's Reach, once designed to imprison a dragon, holds lingering magic that reacts to certain atmospheric conditions. Whatever the truth, the flickers evoke a feeling of distant memory, as though something ancient still lingers above the city's highest tower. Beneath Riften's canals, hidden behind walls of moss and crumbling stone, lie chambers that do not appear on any official map. These chambers contain carvings far older than the city itself, The designs resemble interlocking circles that stretch across entire walls, a symbol that repeats across ruins scattered throughout Skyrim. The circles are uneven, sometimes overlapping in ways that defy logic, and their exact meaning has been lost. Some speculate they represent cycles of time. Others believe they are territorial markers left by ancient clans long erased from history. Regardless of origin, the chambers feel strangely calm. Even when water drips from the ceiling or rats scurry across the stone floor, the air feels still, almost reverent, as though the place exists outside the flow of the city above. And through all of these places, stone spirals, glowing lakes, humming mountains, whispering swamps, Skyrim holds onto its mysteries with quiet determination. The land does not reveal its secrets easily. It allows travelers to pass through its strange corners without explanation, offering only subtle hints. An echo that lasts too long, a shadow that seems to move with intent, a chill that lingers where no wind blows. These mysteries breathe softly through the world, waiting patiently for those who wander slowly enough to notice them. South of Rorikstead lies a stretch of rolling hills where the grass grows in unusual alternating bands, dark, light, dark, light, like the land is breathing in quiet, steady waves. Farmers claim these stripes cannot be cultivated or removed. When plowed, the soil shifts back into the same pattern by morning, as though guided by some unseen hand. The lines run perfectly parallel for yards at a time before curving gently toward a cluster of ancient stones embedded in the earth. These stones are uncarved and unremarkable at first glance, yet animals avoid them instinctively. Horses refuse to graze near the site, and cattle wander around the perimeter as though respecting a boundary older than memory. Some villagers suggest the stones mark an ancient path once walked by spirits or giants, their footprints pressing permanent patterns into the ground. Others believe the hills themselves remember a rhythm, one that the soil continues to echo without understanding why. To the west, along the coast of Hafengar, strange patches of warm sand appear without explanation. Even in the depths of winter, when frost clings to the shore and ice forms along the rocks, these patches remain warm enough to melt snow instantly. The warmth does not radiate outward, but is confined to perfectly oval shapes several feet across. Some are small enough to stand in, others stretch long enough for several people to lie down. The warmth pulses faintly, as though the ground itself breathes with unseen heat. Fishermen claim that during certain nights, the sand emits a soft glow that fades before sunrise. No magical residue has ever been detected, and digging beneath the patches reveals nothing but ordinary soil. These ovals appear and vanish without pattern, leaving the coast dotted with quiet mysteries that defy the cold around them. Deep within the forests of Eastmarch, there is a clearing where no birds sing. The trees grow tall and healthy, their branches arching gracefully toward the sunlight, yet the air remains unnervingly silent. Animals skirt the edges nervously, stepping into the clearing only when absolutely necessary. Those who enter describe a peculiar sensation. Not fear, exactly, but a strange awareness, as though the ground beneath their feet listens intently. When wind blows through the trees, the leaves rustle normally until they reach the clearing's edge, where the sound dims suddenly as if swallowed whole. Some travelers report hearing faint whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs that stop abruptly the moment they strain to listen. Locals avoid camping near the clearing, believing it to be a place where old enchantments once sank into the soil and still linger, dormant but not forgotten. In the mountains near Dawnstar, a cave exists where shadows move slightly out of sync with the objects that cast them. Torches placed along the walls flicker normally, yet their shadows sway moments after the flame shifts, as though responding to a delayed breeze. When explorers raise their hands, the silhouettes on the stone follow, but with a subtle lag, shifting just a heartbeat too slow. Some shadows appear stretched unnaturally long despite the walls being close. Others seem to ripple briefly before settling. No enchantment is detectable on the cave walls, and yet the effect persists regardless of light source. Travelers sometimes report seeing additional shadows, ones that do not correspond to anything in the cave. These extra shapes linger near the edges of the light, vanishing the moment someone tries to approach them. Near the border of the rift, a valley of golden aspen trees hides a strange phenomenon. In the early morning hours, when mist clings low and sunlight filters through the leaves, thin beams of shimmering light sweep slowly across the forest floor. These beams move with graceful intention, like lanterns carried by invisible figures. They drift between trees, pausing occasionally near patches of moss or small stones before continuing onward. The light does not behave like sunlight refracted through mist. It moves too deliberately and at angles that defy the sun's position. Animals treat the beams with reverence. Deer bow their heads when one passes near, and foxes sit still as statues until the shimmering glow moves on. Some claim these lights are remnants of the old forest spirits who once roamed Skyrim before the rise of cities and stone walls. Others believe they are echoes of forgotten magic tied to the land itself. On the southern border near Falkreath, an abandoned hunter's cabin holds a peculiarity that has puzzled wanderers for generations. The cabin is ordinary enough: weathered wood, a collapsed roof, a cold stone hearth, but inside, the air carries a faint, unidentifiable scent. Some describe it as pine sap mixed with cold rain. Others say it smells like burning herbs or warm fur. The scent is recognizable, yet impossible to pinpoint. No amount of searching reveals the source. Strangely, the scent does not fade over time. It lingers as strongly today as when the cabin was first discovered. Animals refuse to enter, and even wolves circle the perimeter cautiously, ears flattened. Some theorize that a powerful creature once lived or died there, leaving behind a scent memory that clings eternally to the air. But the truth remains elusive, one of Skyrim's quieter, more intimate mysteries. Beyond the tundra near Whiterun is a solitary boulder known to produce faint metallic ringing when touched. Travelers who place a hand against its surface hear a soft chime that resonates inside their chest rather than through their ears. The tone changes depending on the temperature and time of day, higher in the morning, deeper at dusk. Scholars who examined the rock found no hollow pockets or mineral veins capable of making such sounds. When struck lightly, the boulder remains silent. Only soft touch evokes the chime, as though responding to the presence of living hands. Some believe the stone once played a role in ancient rituals that used resonance and breath to communicate with the unseen. Whatever its purpose, the boulder stands alone on the tundra, ringing quietly for anyone patient enough to listen. In certain Nordic ruins, there are rooms that remain inexplicably warm despite freezing temperatures outside. The stones radiate gentle heat, enough to melt nearby frost, but not enough to cause discomfort. No fire ever burns within these chambers, and no magical glyphs adorn the walls. Some ruins even contain small pools of warm water that never freeze, even in midwinter. Explorers who spend time in these rooms describe feeling unusually calm, as though the warmth carries emotional weight along with physical comfort. One ruin in particular holds a chamber where the warmth pulses rhythmically, mirroring the beat of a heartbeat. Those who sit there long enough report feeling as though the ruin itself breathes slowly in the dark, inhaling and exhaling through ancient stone lungs. On the outskirts of Windhelm, A narrow path winds through a grove of bare, twisted trees that bloom for only a single hour each year. During this brief time, the branches erupt with pale blue blossoms that glow faintly in the dusk. The blossoms emit no scent and vanish the moment the hour passes, falling to the ground as tiny specks of light that fade before touching the soil. The bloom always occurs on the same night, regardless of weather or season. Some suspect the trees are tied to an old ritual, forgotten by the living but remembered by the land. Others believe the trees respond to celestial alignments far beyond mortal understanding. The ephemeral beauty of the bloom draws curious wanderers each year, though none have discovered its cause. In the canyons of the Reach, echoes behave strangely. A single shout can bounce back in patterns that suggest multiple voices speaking at once, even when no one else is present. Some echoes mimic the original sound perfectly, while others return distorted, as if stretched across time. There are moments when the echoes repeat more times than seems possible, fading slowly into whispers that linger long after silence should have fallen. The Reachmen whisper that the canyons remember every voice that ever passed through them, replaying fragments without permission. Travelers sometimes hear echoes of conversations they never had, or responses to words they never spoke. Whether this is a trick of the landscape or something deeper woven into the stone, the effect remains unsettling and unexplained. And throughout all of these places, glowing trees, whispering valleys, shimmering lights, delayed shadows, Skyrim's mysteries weave themselves through the land like threads of forgotten stories. They linger in ordinary corners, waiting for quiet moments to reveal their presence. The world does not rush to explain itself. Instead, it invites those who wander slowly, breathe deeply, and listen carefully to discover the hints it leaves behind. These mysteries remain not as puzzles to be solved, but as reminders that even in a land shaped by war, dragons, and ancient magic, there are still secrets gentle enough to fall asleep beside. North of Karthwasten, tucked between jagged cliffs where goats refuse to wander, lies a plateau known for an inexplicable phenomenon. Sound behaves strangely there, as though muffled by an unseen barrier. Travelers who shout across the plateau hear nothing return, not even the faintest echo. Even footsteps seem to land softer than they should, barely stirring the thin layer of dust that coats the stone. Birds flying overhead grow quiet while crossing the area, their calls falling silent until they pass beyond its invisible border. Those who rest there describe a sensation of deep calm that borders on unnatural, as though the world itself pauses within that plateau. Some Reachmen claim the land hides the remnants of a forgotten sanctuary where ancient spirits demanded silence so their voices could drift through the mountains undisturbed. Whether the silence is magical or merely a peculiar anomaly of the stone, the effect remains as eerie as it is peaceful. Not far from that plateau, nestled inside a narrow crevice, sits a small shrine with carvings so old they've lost all definition. Only the faintest impressions remain, curves that might have once been horns, spirals worn thin by centuries of rain, and recessed grooves arranged in patterns that no scholar has fully deciphered. This shrine is unusual not for its structure, but for what happens around it. Plants grow in perfect circles, radiating outward, each ring a different shade of green. The soil beneath these rings feels unusually loose, as though something repeatedly churns it from deep below. The rings expand and contract with the seasons, even though no roots or burrowing animals are present. Some imagine the pattern marks the heartbeat of an ancient power slumbering beneath the mountain. Others think the rings are merely the work of strange weather patterns. Yet when the wind blows across the shrine, it produces a low hum that feels almost like a stretched memory. Near Dragon Bridge, There is a peculiar stretch of forest where every tree leans slightly eastward despite growing on flat ground. The trunks curve like bows drawn halfway, and the branches twist as though pulled gently towards something beyond the horizon. No matter how many times woodsmen attempt to chop them down, the trees regrow with the same tilt. When storms roll in, the trees shiver in perfect unison, rustling in a rhythm that sounds faintly like murmured chanting. In the early morning, when light filters through the branches, the shadows they cast form shapes that seem almost humanoid. Elongated figures standing shoulder to shoulder, all facing the same direction. Locals avoid this forest, believing that once, long ago, something powerful passed overhead, and the trees simply never forgot to bow. In the volcanic tundra of Eastmarch, pools of bubbling mud sometimes freeze solid in the middle of boiling. These pools lock themselves into shape instantly, their surfaces becoming smooth as glass despite the heat still rising beneath. The frozen mud forms elaborate swirls and ridges, as though capturing the moment mid-motion. Hours later, the ice melts and the mud resumes its usual restless bubbling, leaving behind no trace of the unnatural stillness. Those who witness the phenomenon report a sudden drop in temperature moments before the freeze occurs, followed by a moment of total silence. Scholars have no explanation, as the geothermal vents beneath the pools should prevent any freezing at all. Some believe the ground momentarily releases bursts of ancient magic trapped within the rock. Others think the land is reacting to something unseen moving deep below. West of Dawnstar lies a field where snow refuses to lie flat. No matter how heavily the blizzards fall, the snow forms gentle hills shaped like shallow bowls. These bowls are always perfectly spaced, and each one holds a faint depression at its center. When the sun rises, the bowls glisten with a subtle iridescence, as though dusted with powdered moonstone. Wanderers who walk through the field often describe hearing faint chiming sounds coming from beneath the snow, like distant bells ringing underwater. The sound grows slightly louder when footsteps disturb the surface. Yet when the snow melts in summer, nothing lies beneath the bowls. No stones, no structures, no unusual vegetation. Some whisper that the bowls are the remnants of massive footprints left by creatures long vanished. Others say they are sleeping hollows, where spirits once curled themselves into the earth. The swamps of Hjalmarch conceal another mystery in the form of a lone lantern that hangs from a dead birch tree. This lantern never rusts, never dims, and never sways in the wind, as though locked in place. It emits no light, and appears entirely ordinary, yet those who pass beneath it often experience sudden changes in weather, fog rolling in when the sky was clear, or cold breezes rising from nowhere. Some villagers claim the lantern once belonged to a traveler who vanished without a trace, leaving behind only this silent marker. Others believe it marks a boundary between worlds, though no one agrees on what lies beyond. If touched, the lantern feels warm regardless of temperature, as though recently held by unseen hands. Deep in the forests of the rift, vines grow in patterns that resemble writing. These vines twist around tree trunks in looping curves and intersecting lines that look eerily deliberate. The patterns change over time, growing outward as though forming new words or extending old ones. When cut, the vines regrow in the exact same formation within days. Historians have attempted to compare these patterns to known scripts, but nothing matches precisely. The shapes resemble fragments of Nordic runes, hints of old Falmer lines, and even swirls typical of nature magic. Some druids insist the forest itself is trying to communicate, expressing its ancient memory through living script. Regardless of interpretation, the vines continue their quiet work, rearranging themselves year after year with steady purpose. Rumors persist of a small island off the northern coast where footsteps echo loudly even on soft snow. Travelers who row out to the island report that every step they take sounds amplified tenfold, as if the snow were thin ice covering a vast hollow space. Yet when the surface is tested, it proves solid stone beneath a thin layer of frost. The echo persists no matter how gentle the step or how deep the snow. In some places, the echoes overlap strangely, producing layered sounds that seem to come from several directions at once. Some claim the island once housed a structure now swallowed by time, its halls buried beneath centuries of rock. Others believe the echo is tied to old magic that still resonates through the stone. The island remains uninhabited and avoided except by the most curious wanderers. Outside Shore's Stone, miners speak of a cavern where a single stalactite glows faintly with pale blue light. This glow is visible only when the cavern is completely silent. The moment someone speaks or a pickaxe strikes stone, the glow disappears instantly, returning only after a long stretch of complete stillness. The light does not flicker or pulse. It shines steadily like a single star lost underground. Attempts to remove the stalactite fail as the stone becomes brittle and crumbles the moment anyone tries to chisel it free. Some think the glow is a natural mineral reacting to vibrations, but the cavern holds no other stones like it. Miners often sit quietly in the darkness just to watch it shine, drawn by a sense of tranquility they cannot explain. Near Iverstead, along the base of the mountain, a narrow waterfall produces mist that drifts upward rather than falling to the ground. The mist moves in slow spirals, lifting into the air like smoke rising from embers. These spirals drift toward the treetops before dissipating without soaking the leaves. On nights when the moon is full, the mist glows faintly, revealing shapes and patterns that resemble wings unfurling. Some locals believe the waterfall is a doorway to higher realms, its mist carrying fragments of something ancient. Others think the effect is caused by unusual air currents, but those who stand near it long enough describe a strange feeling, as though gravity softens and the world exhales around them. And in all these places, soundless plateaus, leaning forests, glowing caverns, rising mist, Skyrim continues to whisper secrets that refuse to fully reveal themselves. The land holds memories that slip through fingers, echoes that linger at the edges of hearing, and lights that flicker just beyond understanding. These mysteries rest quietly across the world, waiting for anyone curious enough to wander slowly, listen carefully, and allow the unknown to feel at home beside them. High above the western cliffs of solitude, where gulls wheel soundlessly in the wind and waves crash against jagged stone far below, there is a ledge that locals call the Listening Perch. From a distance, it looks like any other outcropping of rock, but those who climb to it discover a strange phenomenon. When someone stands at its center, all sound from the sea falls silent. The roar of waves fades instantly, replaced by a faint ringing deep inside the ears, a tone so soft it feels more imagined than heard. Even the wind, which howls fiercely along the cliffside, dims to a gentle hush the moment a person steps into the right spot. Travelers describe feeling watched by something ancient and patient, as though the air itself holds a memory not meant for mortal senses. No spell causes the silence, and stepping away from the center returns the world to normal, leaving behind a lingering feeling of having overheard a secret too quiet to decipher. Near the border of the Pale, a patch of evergreen trees grows in a perfect circle around a rock formation shaped like a coiled serpent. The stone is cracked and weathered, yet faint traces of carved scales remain visible beneath moss and snow. No one knows who placed the stone or why the trees grow so precisely around it. The evergreens remain lush even in harsh winters, their needles unusually vibrant, almost shimmering under moonlight. Wolves avoid the circle entirely, giving it a wide berth even when pursuing prey. Hunters who rest near the trees report hearing soft thudding sounds beneath the ground at night, like distant footsteps far below the soil. Some believe the formation marks the resting place of a forgotten creature that once slithered through the mountains. Others say the stone is merely a relic of an old ritual long forgotten, its significance lost to time. Whatever its purpose, the circle feels alive, quietly pulsing with a presence that refuses to fade. In the southern foothills of the Reach, where red stone juts from the earth like broken teeth, a ravine contains carvings that glow only at dusk. These carvings, etched high into the walls where no ladder could easily reach, depict elongated figures with flowing shapes trailing behind them like smoke. When touched, the stone is cold, but the carvings emit a faint warmth under fading daylight, as though drawing strength from the setting sun. When night finally settles, the glow retreats completely, leaving behind nothing more than dark lines and indistinguishable shapes. Some travelers claim that if one stares long enough as the glow fades, the figures appear to shift positions, their arms lifting or heads tilting slightly. Even those who dismiss the carvings as illusions admit the ravine feels strange, as if something ancient once lingered there at the boundary between day and night. East of Morthal lies a pond that never freezes, even during the harshest winters when temperatures drop low enough to crack stone. The water remains perfectly still, its surface smooth as black glass. Snow gathers around its edges, but melts instantly upon touching the water. Locals avoid the pond at night, saying the reflection sometimes shows things not present in the real world, trees that aren't there, clouds moving in unfamiliar patterns, stars arranged in constellations unknown to Skyrim. Some travelers have reported seeing figures standing behind them in the reflection, only to turn around and find no one there. The water itself has no magical aura detectable by any known means, yet it behaves like a window into something just beyond sight. Even the mud surrounding it feels unnaturally warm, hinting at a source of energy buried beneath the earth that refuses to cool. To the east, near Treva's Watch, stands a single pillar of stone taller than any nearby boulder. Its surface is etched with grooves that spiral upward in a pattern too smooth to be natural, yet too chaotic to be intentional. Rainwater flows upward along these grooves for a short distance before reversing direction and trickling down normally. This strange behavior occurs only when storms pass through the region, leading some to suspect the pillar harnesses energy from thunder or lightning. The grooves sometimes shimmer faintly during heavy rain, casting pale ripples of light across the stone. No one knows who erected the pillar or why its markings behave this way. When lightning strikes nearby, the grooves glow brightly for a brief moment before fading into dull, silent stone once more. Deep in the wild forests north of Riften, there is a glade where fallen leaves never rot. Piles of them gather beneath old oaks and birches, yet none crumble into soil. Their colors remain crisp, golden, red, and faded orange, even months after dropping from the trees. When stepped on, the leaves make no sound, as though cushioned by invisible padding. Animals approach the glade cautiously, sniffing the air before deciding whether to enter. Elks sometimes graze near the edges, but never cross fully into the center. People who spend time in the glade describe a soft tingling along their arms, as if static electricity dances across their skin. Some suspect the glade rests atop a ley line, a conduit of old energy that preserves everything it touches. Others whisper that the leaves hide something buried beneath them, something that the forest refuses to let decay. In an unmarked stretch of tundra south of Dawnstar, there is a peculiar standing stone shaped like an hourglass. No inscriptions mar its surface, and no local legends mention it. Yet travelers insist that when the wind blows from the north, the stone emits a low hum that vibrates through the ground rather than through the air. Snow collects around the stone in even layers, never drifting out of place. On rare occasions during the northern lights, faint strands of glowing color wrap around the stone's center, spiraling upward like a slow-moving vortex. Standing close during this phenomenon creates a feeling of weightlessness, as if the air has thinned and gravity loosened its grip just slightly. No mage has managed to produce an explanation, leaving the stone an unresolved fragment of Skyrim's forgotten past. In the shadow of the Velothi Mountains lies a cavern where ice forms in shapes that resemble delicate feathers. The feather ice clings to the walls in sweeping patterns, each structure paper-thin yet incredibly durable. Torches held near the ice illuminate faint iridescence running along the edges of the formations, shimmering with colors not found in natural frost. The temperature inside the cavern is far colder than outside, even in deep winter. Breath turns to mist instantly, freezing and drifting downward like falling snowflakes. When multiple people speak, the sound seems to merge into one muted hum, as though the cavern absorbs individual tones and reflects only blended echoes. Some believe the feather frost marks the presence of ancient elemental spirits tied to cold and silence. Others speak of dragons who once breathed icy words into the stone, leaving behind frozen echoes that never melted. West of Windhelm stands a grove of trees whose trunks display faint scorch marks despite no recorded fires in the area. The scorch marks form swirling patterns that spiral outward from a central point on each trunk. When rain falls, steam rises briefly from the patterns, creating the illusion that the trees are exhaling smoke. The ground beneath the grove remains warm even in heavy snow, and patches of grass grow green despite the frigid climate. Locals avoid chopping wood in this grove, believing the trees are bound to a long-forgotten flame that sleeps beneath the roots. Some hunters swear they've seen faint orange glows flickering at the edges of the grove during storms, though no source for the light ever appears. In the canyons south of Markarth, wind sometimes travels through the narrow rock passages in melodic tones that resemble simple musical phrases. The sound rises and falls with surprising structure, almost like a song carried on the air. The melodies vary from night to night, some mournful, others strangely joyful. No matter how many times scholars attempt to map the passageways to replicate the sounds, the melodies refuse to be predictable. Even the slightest change in temperature or wind direction alters them. The Reachmen claim these airs carry the voices of long-departed bards who once sang in the stone halls of forgotten strongholds. Others insist the rock itself creates the music, shaped into resonance by centuries of shifting pressure. Regardless of origin, the canyons sing softly in the dark, their voices rising through the night like memories set to melody. And as night settles across these lands, silent perches, glowing ravines, warm ponds, humming pillars, Skyrim continues to breathe mysteries that seem almost alive. The world keeps its secrets gently, revealing just enough to stir curiosity while holding the deeper truths close. These unexplained places rest quietly in forests, mountains, and tundra, waiting for wanderers who walk slowly, listen deeply, and allow themselves to feel the strange pulse of a world older than maps and stories. On the icy coast north of Winterhold, where jagged shelves of frozen seawater jut out into the Sea of Ghosts like fractured mirrors, there is a lone arch of stone rising from the shoreline. The arch looks natural from a distance, yet when one stands beneath it, the world seems to shift subtly. The air under the arch feels warmer than the surrounding frost, carrying a faint scent reminiscent of distant pine forests that are nowhere near the frozen coast. Footsteps sound strangely muffled beneath it, even though the stone is hard and dry. On particularly quiet nights, Travelers claim the arch emits a soft humming, barely audible but persistent, as if the stone whispers something too ancient to form words. When storms roll across the sea, lightning sometimes strikes the arch repeatedly, though no scorch marks ever appear. The stone remains cold and smooth, as though untouched by the violence of the sky. Farther inland, in a narrow valley rarely visited, lies a field of frost-covered flowers that bloom only beneath the light of the auroras. These flowers remain closed during the day, their pale petals curled tightly around their stems like dormant stars. But when the night sky glows with shifting ribbons of green and blue, the flowers open in perfect unison. Their petals reflect the aurora's colors, shimmering faintly with hues that seem almost liquid. The air around them feels unusually still, as if the entire valley pauses to watch the spectacle. The flowers produce no scent, but some who visit claim they hear soft musical tones rising from them, sounds like faint chimes echoing beneath the light. Scholars who have tried to gather samples find that the petals vanish when plucked, dissolving into dust that scatters on the wind. Southwest of Whiterun, beneath a cluster of towering cliffs, a small cave contains a strange phenomenon of time. The entrance to the cave feels no different from any other, yet once inside, anyone who attempts to keep track of their steps or breaths quickly loses count. Minutes feel like seconds, or sometimes stretch endlessly. Fires burn without consuming wood. Droplets of water fall in slow arcs that seem to defy the natural pull of gravity. Those who linger too long describe a sense that the world outside the cave has drifted away, as though time within the cavern follows its own path. When leaving, the sun's position in the sky is often different from what travelers expect, though the difference is never drastic enough to prove anything definitively. Some claim the cave rests atop a convergence of powerful energies that subtly distort perception. Others simply avoid it, unwilling to test their sense of reality. Hidden deep within the Pale's endless snowfields is a boulder known as the Whisper Stone. When wind passes over it, the stone emits a low sound that resembles someone murmuring through layers of cloth. The sound is quiet, barely more than a breath, yet it travels farther than expected, reaching ears even in the midst of a snowstorm. Sometimes the murmurs rise and fall in patterns that resemble speech, but no language scholar has ever been able to interpret them. The stone itself is nothing extraordinary to look at, a simple gray shape half buried in snow, but travelers often feel drawn to sit beside it, listening to its ghostly tones. Wolves avoid the Whisper Stone, and even saber cats grow restless when approaching it. Some believe the stone holds echoes of long-dead voices trapped within its surface. Others think the sound is simply the result of wind interacting with hidden grooves. Whatever the explanation, the Whisper Stone remains one of the Pale's quiet enigmas, humming steadily through nights that seem endless. Near the ruins of Helgen, before the forest bends toward the river, lies a clearing where the grass glows faintly after rainfall. The glow is not bright enough to illuminate the area, but it gives the ground a soft silver sheen. This effect lasts only a few hours before fading completely. No one has identified a plant or fungus capable of causing the phenomenon. The glow does not correspond to moon cycles or weather patterns, and it appears only after certain storms, seemingly without pattern. When touched, the grass feels slightly warmer than the surrounding soil, and some describe the sensation as comforting, almost like the faint warmth of a memory recalled from years ago. Predators steer clear of the clearing during these glowing nights, though deer sometimes gather along its edges, as if drawn by the strange shimmer. Underneath a rocky overhang near Shore's watchtower lies a stone platform covered in intricate engravings. The designs resemble maps, though not of any known region in Skyrim. The lines curve and cross in ways that suggest rivers, valleys, or mountain ranges, yet none correspond to any geography recorded by cartographers. The platform remains warm regardless of weather. Snow melts instantly upon touching it, but only on its surface. Surrounding ground remains cold and covered in frost. The engravings are shallow yet precise, as if carved with tools sharper than any modern steel. Some believe the platform depicts regions from eras long forgotten, landscapes altered by natural disasters or ancient magic. Others claim it portrays realms beyond Skyrim entirely, glimpses into plains or lands no longer accessible. No matter the speculation, the map platform lies quietly beneath the overhang, untouched by time and still warm beneath the snow. On the slopes of Mount Anthor, there is a section of stone that rings like metal when struck. The sound reverberates through the mountain, echoing down into the valleys below with a tone far deeper than expected from simple rock. Even a light tap with a wooden stick produces a resonance so rich it feels as though the mountain itself sings in response. In rare cases, when storms churn overhead, the stone hums without being touched, vibrating faintly beneath the falling snow. The hum is steady, steady enough to lull listeners into a strange calm. Some suggest this stone contains veins of an unknown mineral that carry sound uniquely well. Others think the stone interacts with the voice itself, retaining faint traces of ancient shouts spoken nearby. Whatever the source, the ringing stone continues to sing softly into the wind. In Eastmarch, beyond the sulfur pools and steaming vents, lies a tiny island surrounded by murky water that rarely freezes despite the cold. The island contains nothing but a single willow tree whose leaves never fall. Even in winter, the tree remains lush, its branches swaying gently as though pushed by a breeze not felt anywhere else. The water surrounding the island reflects the tree perfectly, creating an image so sharp it appears like a doorway into another place. At night, the reflection occasionally flickers, showing glimpses of a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. Those who camp nearby sometimes hear the tree rustle, as if something moves quickly through its leaves, though no creature ever reveals itself. Some believe the willow grows atop a source of deep magic tied to the land's forgotten past. Others avoid the island entirely, unsettled by the tree's eternal presence. Between the crags north of Canesgrove, a narrow fissure emits a faint blue glow, visible only in complete darkness. The glow seems to seep from deep within the rock, pulsating softly like a heartbeat. When torches are brought near, the glow dims instantly, as though recoiling from the light. The fissure releases no heat, no scent, and no detectable magical aura. If one presses an ear against the stone, faint vibrations can be heard, though they do not match any known rhythm of nature. Some theorize the glow is caused by rare minerals reacting to cold. Others think it is the residue of a powerful spell cast centuries ago. No matter the explanation, the fissure remains hidden in plain sight, glowing gently beneath the blanket of night. And throughout all these places, singing mountains, glowing valleys, whispering stones, time-strange caverns, Skyrim continues to hold mysteries that resist unraveling. The land speaks softly in patterns carved by forces older than memory, offering glimpses into truths that remain just beyond reach. These enigmas linger patiently for wanderers who step quietly through the world, ready to notice the gentle, forgotten strangeness that lives beneath every shadow and snowfall. Among the rolling plains south of Whiterun, where the wind slides softly across open fields and long grass sways in smooth, rhythmic waves, there is a stretch of land where shadows behave in ways that do not match the shape of the world. At certain hours, usually just after sunrise or just before sunset, The shadows of stones elongate far beyond their natural length, stretching uphill even though the ground slopes downward. Travelers passing through the plains report seeing silhouettes of trees that do not exist, branches flickering at the edge of their vision as if the sun were shining through forests long since vanished. Some have claimed that if one stands perfectly still and waits, the shadows eventually shift into clearer patterns, shapes resembling towers, arches, or the loose outline of a distant city whose walls never stood on Skyrim's soil. When clouds drift overhead, the shadows vanish completely, leaving only the unbroken gold of the field behind. And yet, each evening, as the sun tilts low, the strange silhouettes return, as though following a ritual the land refuses to abandon. North of the hot springs in Eastmarch, where steam rises in soft plumes that glide across the ground like spirits lost in thought, there exists a single stone slab wedged halfway into the earth. The slab is carved with shallow grooves that loop and cross like the pathways of a wandering insect, but the grooves are so precise they almost appear to glide across the stone when moving torchlight dances over them. At night, the slab gives off a faint warmth, pleasant and calming, as though it has absorbed centuries of heat from the nearby springs and stores it within itself. But the true strangeness lies not in the warmth, but in the fact that snow never falls on the slab. Even during blizzards, the flakes drift around it as though pushed away by an invisible dome. Locals who stumble upon the stone say they hear a soft hum when resting a hand upon its surface, a sound not audible to the ear, but felt deep inside the palm like a distant heartbeat. Deep in the forests of Falkreath lies a spot where trees grow in a spiral formation that tightens as it moves inward like a curling fern unfurling in reverse. The trees near the spiral's edge appear old and sturdy, their trunks thick with age, but closer to the center, the trees become younger, their bark smooth and pale, as though the spiral moves backward through time. At the innermost point lies a single sapling no taller than a child's shoulder. Despite harsh winters, the sapling always bears a small cluster of green leaves, even in the dead of frost. Wanderers claim that when they stand in the spiral's center, the forest around them grows unnaturally quiet, the wind slowing until each breath feels like a held moment. Some swear the spiral is growing slowly across the forest floor, expanding outward one tree at a time. Others believe the pattern marks the spot where something once descended from the sky, leaving behind an imprint that the forest tries endlessly to trace. Far east, beyond the jagged ridges near Stony Creek, lies a hollow where the stones ring like crystal when struck. The hollow itself is small, no more than a shallow basin nestled between rising cliffs of slate and iron, but scattered across its floor are dozens of smooth, rounded stones that emit clear tones when brushed together. The tones differ between stones, some high and delicate like droplets falling onto metal, others deep and resonant like distant drums reverberating from underground caverns. No one knows how these stones formed. They do not match the geology of the region, and when moved far from the hollow, they fall silent, becoming nothing more than ordinary rock. But within the hollow, the stones seem to wake, their tones carrying across the walls in soft, haunting harmonies. At night, when cold winds sweep through, the stones occasionally ring on their own, producing thin melodies that drift across the valley like a lullaby sung by unseen voices. South of Kinesgrove lies a slope of earth where snow melts in lines resembling script. The lines appear every spring, curling and twisting along the hillside as though written by a hand far larger than any mortal's. The characters, if they can be called that, look different each year, though certain shapes repeat: spirals, long curves, points that narrow to sharp angles. Scholars who have studied the phenomenon insist the lines cannot be runic. They form no pattern recognizable in any ancient language. Yet the snow always melts along the exact same routes, forming white pathways through the grass that shine brightly in the sun. Some villagers claim the lines are the footprints of an invisible creature that walks the hill each winter, its steps melting snow beneath its invisible weight. Others believe the ground simply remembers the movement of something immense that passed through long ago, its path frozen into the memory of the land. Near the border of the rift, not far from Treva River, stands a lone pine that sways even when there is no wind. Its movement is gentle, barely noticeable at first, but those who sit beneath its branches for long enough feel the steady rhythm, a slow forward tilt followed by a soft backward pull. The tree moves as though responding to something only it can sense. Birds perch on it without hesitation, yet squirrels run down its bark with unusual caution, pausing frequently to look into the distance. At night, fireflies gather around the pine more densely than anywhere else in the region, drifting in circles that mimic the tree's slow sway. The ground beneath it is soft and warm, as though insulated by hidden roots that radiate heat. Some believe the pine grew over something buried long ago. Others think it reacts to unseen currents of energy that wander through the rift like restless spirits. In the ruins scattered across the hills of Hafingar, there is one chamber whose walls retain warmth long after fire has died. The stones along the chamber's northern wall feel soft to the touch, not in texture but in temperature, radiating comfort even in the coldest winters. The warmth does not spread to the floor or the remaining walls. It stays locked along that one stretch of stone, rising gently and fading away at the edges. Archaeologists found no traces of enchantments, yet when torches are carried through the room, their flames flicker toward the warm wall, leaning as though drawn by something unseen. Strange inscriptions once decorated the stone, but time has worn them into faint indentations that resemble waves curling into each other. When snow falls atop the ruins at night, the flakes melt instantly when drifting near the wall, creating a faint mist that hovers in the air like the remnants of a forgotten breath. Near the eastern shore of Lake Islanalta lies a patch of reeds that grow twice as tall as any nearby plants. Their stalks are thick and sturdy, and when the lake is calm, the reeds stand perfectly still, even when strong gusts blow across the shoreline. Travelers who approach notice that no insects land on them and no fish swim beneath their shadows. When touched, the reeds vibrate faintly, producing a low hum similar to the resonance of a distant horn. At night, the reeds sway slowly, regardless of wind direction. Some fishermen have claimed to see soft blue lights drifting between the stalks, though the lights vanish the moment anyone comes close. More than one wanderer has described the sensation of being watched while passing the reeds, as if the tall plants hide a presence that prefers to observe the world quietly, undisturbed. On the southern edge of Winterhold's frozen sea, a cluster of jagged ice shards forms a design so symmetrical it seems impossible for nature to shape. The shards stretch upward like the ribs of a colossal creature buried beneath the ice. What makes the formation stranger is that it emits faint warmth at the base, just enough to prevent snow from gathering around it. Even in the coldest nights, a thin ring of exposed ice circles the formation like a halo. Travelers who sleep nearby often report vivid dreams of white landscapes and glowing skies that feel otherworldly, too peaceful to belong to Skyrim's harsh climate. The formation shifts slightly each year, its shards angling a bit differently, as though responding to the seasons. Some believe the ice marks the site of an ancient magical event, frozen in time. Others whisper that something beneath the sea breathes faint heat into the world above. And throughout these places, swaying pines, ringing stones, Dreaming ice, whispering slabs, Skyrim continues to hold on to its quiet wonders. The land leaves traces of stories untold, lingering beneath snow and soil like muffled heartbeats. These mysteries wait patiently, asking for nothing but a moment of stillness from those willing to listen, willing to wander, willing to let their curiosity drift softly through the air like falling snow. On the northern edge of the Pale, where snow drifts form ridges as tall as small houses, and the horizon melts into a blur of white and sky, there is a strange pillar of ice that seems suspiciously out of place. Unlike the surrounding formations shaped by wind and time, this pillar stands perfectly straight, its edges unnaturally smooth, as though carved by hands more precise than any mortal tools. Even during storms, when rough new ice gathers across the tundra, the pillar remains unchanged, resisting frost buildup entirely. Travelers speak of seeing faint shapes reflected in its surface, shadows moving behind their own reflections, resembling figures that stand at impossible angles. At sunrise, the pillar refracts light into a series of thin, shimmering beams that stretch across the snow like pathways leading toward distant, unseen places. Those who touch it report a gentle vibration beneath the ice, subtle but unmistakably alive. Beyond the foothills, near Iverstead, lies a hollow where fog clings to the ground in thin, swirling threads, even on clear days. The fog never rises above knee height, as though held down by an unseen weight. In the mornings, it glows faintly with pale blue light, illuminating small stones scattered throughout the hollow. These stones are smooth, polished, and cold even in summer, yet the fog coils around them as if drawn by something within. When travelers walk through the hollow, the fog parts around their legs like water, closing again behind them without delay. Some claim that on rare occasions, the fog lifts briefly enough to reveal a pattern etched into the ground beneath, lines forming circles and spirals similar to forgotten symbols found in old barrows. The moment the fog settles again, the pattern vanishes. Some believe the hollow remembers rituals once performed there, memories held so deeply that even the air itself refuses to let them fade. Near the western edge of Falkreath Hold, a cluster of ancient pines grows in a perfect oval formation, their trunks thick and twisted with age. What makes the grove unusual is the faint humming that emanates from the trees whenever the wind blows from the south. The sound is subtle, similar to distant chanting, but low and resonant, as though traveling through the earth rather than the air. Birds avoid the grove entirely, but deer often gather near its edges, their heads lowered as if listening to something that comforts them. The ground inside the oval remains uncannily level, free of roots or fallen branches, and the soil feels unusually soft underfoot. When heavy rain falls, the grove drains instantly, staying dry even in the midst of a downpour. Locals claim the grove marks the site of an ancient oath or pact, its quiet hum echoing a promise still kept by something unseen. To the east of Windhelm lies a frozen marshland where pools of water freeze into unusual shapes, curving arcs, spirals, and crescents far too intricate to be natural. Even when the marsh thaws in warmer seasons, these shapes reappear each winter, as though molded by a sculptor whose identity remains unknown. When moonlight strikes the frozen forms, they glow faintly with a soft, pale luminescence that casts ghostly shadows across the reeds. Some travelers claim the shapes shift subtly when nobody is watching. What looks like a spiral one day appears more like a winding path the next. Hunters avoid the marsh at night, saying the frozen shapes remind them of symbols found in old burial mounds, shapes not meant to be disturbed. Others insist the formations are simply the result of strange water currents and extreme cold. Yet the marsh continues to reshape itself year after year, its patterns repeating like a forgotten ritual frozen into the land. Near Whiterun, in a rocky stretch of tundra where storms frequently roll down from the mountains, there is a peculiar rock formation known as the Listening Wall. When the wind blows from the east, the wall emits sounds that resemble faint laughter, though distorted and distant, like the echo of a memory rather than a living voice. The sound drifts across the stones unpredictably. Sometimes it rises to a soft giggle carried upward toward the sky. Other times it grows low and slow, trailing across the ground like a sigh. Travelers who sit with their back against the wall during these moments describe a feeling of companionship, as though someone stands behind them, just out of sight. The effect is strangely comforting rather than frightening. Some believe the wall absorbs and reflects bits of sound from the surrounding landscape, shaping them into echoes that resemble voices. Others imagine the wall remembers ancient gatherings long lost to time. Far south, near the borders where Skyrim meets Cyrodiil, lies a meadow where one particular patch of grass grows taller than the rest. The blades tower nearly to a person's waist, forming a rectangular patch perfectly aligned with the rising sun. When the first light of dawn hits the meadow, the tall grass shimmers with a faint golden gleam, as though each blade has been dusted with crushed amber. No matter how many times people attempt to clear or cut the grass, it grows back within days, reaching its unusual height with remarkable speed. The meadow surrounding it seems entirely ordinary, which only heightens the strangeness of this rectangular patch. Some speculate that the grass marks the outline of an ancient dwelling, its boundaries still remembered by the earth. Others say the patch grows above a source of magic, buried deep beneath the soil, pulsing quietly through the roots. In the forests along the river Hjal, a grove of birch trees displays bark patterns that shift slightly each season. The dark markings on their pale trunks rearrange themselves over time, forming shapes that resemble unfamiliar symbols. The changes are subtle. One small curl becomes a loop, one straight line branches into two, but those who study the trees carefully notice the evolution. When reflected in water, the bark patterns appear even more complex, as though doubled or layered by hidden meaning. Locals believe the birches grow in soil touched by old forest spirits, and that the shifting markings are attempts to communicate through living wood. Others theorize that disease or insects cause the patterns to change, but those who stand quietly in the grove swear the trees feel aware, their trunks creaking softly in ways that seem almost conversational. Hidden beneath the snowdrifts east of Dawnstar lies a cave entrance, sealed by a thin layer of ice so clear it's nearly invisible. Behind the ice, faint blue light pulses within the cavern, moving in slow, rhythmic waves like the glow of underwater creatures drifting through darkness. No amount of heat seems able to melt the ice sealing the entrance. Torches sputter out instantly when brought too close, their flames snuffed as though deprived of oxygen. Some travelers claim the cave's light reacts to the presence of living beings, glowing brighter when approached and dimming when stepped away from. No one has ever entered the cave, and yet the light continues to pulse through the seasons, a slow, steady heartbeat hidden beneath the frozen north. Deep within the reach, among the twisted cliffs and shadowed ravines, lies a stone archway that stands alone with no ruins surrounding it. The arch is carved from a single slab of granite, its shape worn but unmistakably intentional. Beneath the arch, the ground is smooth, almost polished, as though countless feet once walked through it. When wind whistles through the ravine, the arch amplifies the sound into tones that resemble a distant horn. These tones change depending on the direction of the breeze, creating a quiet song that echoes through the rocks like a ritual performed long ago. At dawn, the arch aligns perfectly with the sun, casting a long shadow that points toward a cliff face miles away. Some who follow the shadow claim they find markings etched into the stone there, though others see nothing. The arch remains one of the Reach's loneliest monuments, a doorway to nowhere that somehow feels as though it once opened to something vast. And through all these places, laughing walls, glowing marshes, humming groves, unreachable caverns, Skyrim continues to keep secrets tucked beneath snow and stone. The land seems to remember things that the people have forgotten, storing echoes in its trees, shadows in its valleys, and whispers in its winds. These mysteries drift quietly across the world, offering gentle reminders that even in a land shaped by chaos and legend, there are wonders that exist only for those who walk slowly enough to notice. In the far northern reaches of Skyrim, where the Sea of Ghosts freezes into sheets of pale blue glass and the horizon blurs into a silent white expanse, there lies a peculiar stretch of shoreline where the ice forms perfectly smooth crescents. These crescents are arranged in a pattern that seems almost deliberate, curving gently inward like the marks of some enormous creature dragging its claws through the frost. No matter how often the ice melts and reforms, the crescents reappear in the exact same shapes, as though following instructions laid into the air itself. When moonlight glances across the shoreline, the crescents shimmer faintly with a soft bluish glow, reflecting a pattern onto the snow that resembles runes too faint to decipher. Some who travel here swear they hear distant whispers carried across the frozen sea, voices so stretched by wind and distance that they resemble echoes from another world entirely. Beyond the riverbanks near Kynesgrove lies a meadow that seems to breathe. During certain seasons, the grasses rise and fall in a slow, rhythmic motion that mirrors the steady pattern of inhaling and exhaling. The movement is not caused by wind. The air remains perfectly still even as the meadow ripples gently like the flank of some sleeping giant beneath the earth. Animals avoid walking across it, stepping carefully around the edges as though instinct warns them of something beneath the soil. Some villagers believe the land remembers a creature that once slumbered there, its heartbeat pressed so deeply into the earth that the ground still imitates the motion ages later. Others think the meadow rests atop warm air currents rising from fissures below. And yet, even on cold nights, when frost forms across the edges of the meadow, the center remains soft and warm, pulsing gently beneath the starlight. In the forests east of Morthal, there is a grove where the trees cast shadows even in complete darkness. On moonless nights when the sky is black and lanterns extinguish themselves in the dense fog, faint silhouettes still stretch across the forest floor. These shadows move slowly, shifting positions as though cast by branches, swaying in a wind that no one can feel. The shadows never align cleanly with the trees themselves. Some appear elongated, reaching unnaturally far across the ground. Others curl into shapes too deliberate to be products of chance. Travelers who sleep beneath these trees sometimes report dreams of wandering figures made of shadow, drifting silently through endless forests, lit only by starlight. When dawn finally breaks, the shadows fade instantly, leaving no evidence of their nocturnal dance. South of Riften, close to the border where the ground begins to rise into the towering slopes of the Gerall Mountains, a narrow canyon holds a stream that flows in inexplicable directions. On warm days, the water runs uphill in short bursts, trickling upward along smooth stone channels before cascading back down moments later. The effect is subtle if one does not look closely, the water shifting direction in quiet, gentle motions. When the sunlight hits the canyon at the right angle, the stream reflects dazzling arcs of light that seem to hover above the surface. Some claim the phenomenon is caused by strange temperature differences within the canyon. Others insist the water follows invisible paths carved by magic too old to identify. Whatever the cause, the stream has drawn wanderers for generations, its impossible movement offering a moment of quiet fascination in the wild. Near the cliffs overlooking Dragon Bridge, a peculiar echo haunts the stone, a soft, lingering tone that persists long after any sound has passed. When someone shouts or laughs near the cliff face, the echo returns stretched and distorted, as though bouncing across an impossibly deep void. Even soft-spoken words return in strange harmonics, sounding almost musical. On certain foggy mornings, the echo repeats itself a second or third time with diminishing clarity, like a memory trying not to fade. Some locals believe the echo carries remnants of ancient songs once performed by Nord bards who used the cliffs to amplify their voices. Others whisper that the rock holds traces of a forgotten ritual that carved sound itself into the stone. Whatever the origin, the echo remains one of Skyrim's quiet marvels, a reminder that even simple sounds can behave strangely in a land shaped by mystery. Not far from the hot springs of Eastmarch lies a grove of ash trees whose bark carries swirling patterns that resemble eyes. These markings appear natural at a glance, formed by knots and whorls beneath the surface. But in certain light, particularly during twilight, the shapes seem to align with uncanny precision, creating the impression of hundreds of watching eyes peering from the trunks. The forest around the grove is otherwise ordinary. Birds sing, insects buzz, and small animals dig burrows in the soft soil. Yet within the grove, the air feels heavier, the sounds quieter. Some travelers swear the patterns shift slightly when no one is looking, rearranging themselves into new shapes that vanish the moment they turn their gaze back. The grove's stillness often lingers in the minds of those who pass through it, as though the memory of being watched remains long after the markings fade from view. Beneath a rocky cliff north of Windhelm lies a cavern whose walls are lined with crystals that emit faint warmth. Unlike typical geodes found throughout Skyrim, these crystals glow only when touched by living hands. The glow lasts for several long seconds, casting pulsing reflections across the walls that resemble ripples on a lake's surface. When the warmth fades, so does the glow, returning the cavern to its natural darkness. No enchantments seem to fuel the crystals, and their warmth never intensifies enough to melt the surrounding frost. Some speculate the crystals respond to body heat or breath, though no known mineral behaves in such a way. Others believe the cavern was once used by ancient mages who imbued the crystals with traces of forgotten spells. Whatever their origin, the glowing crystals create an otherworldly calm, as though the cavern itself reacts gently to the presence of life. In the marshes near Morthal, where the ground grows soft and marshlights drift across the water like lost stars, a series of wooden posts protrudes from the mud in a wide circle. No structure remains between them, and the posts are worn down to stumps barely higher than a person's knee. Yet they are arranged so precisely that the circle remains nearly perfect even after decades of erosion. When fog rolls in, the fog collects thickly within the ring, while remaining thin outside it, creating a dome-like veil that obscures everything within. Some who have stepped into the fog report hearing faint splashing from far beneath their feet, as though something large moved in deep water that should not exist in the shallow marsh. Others describe sudden changes in temperature, brief bursts of warmth followed by sharp chills. The posts themselves carry no markings, leaving behind a structure whose purpose has been swallowed by the swamp. Along the mountains bordering High Rock, a single solitary oak grows at an altitude where no tree should survive. Its trunk is thick and perfectly healthy despite the freezing winds that batter the slopes. The tree blooms with pale white leaves in summer and vibrant red ones in autumn, though no other vegetation thrives within miles. Beneath the tree sits a perfectly circular patch of bare earth where snow never gathers. The soil there is warm enough to kneel upon comfortably even in the heart of winter. Travelers who rest beneath the tree describe feeling unusually calm, as though a gentle presence surrounds them. Some even claim to hear faint murmurs within the branches, soft, indistinct sounds that resemble words spoken from a great distance. The tree offers no clues to its origin, standing alone against the mountain winds like a quiet guardian that has forgotten the reason it remains. South of Blackreach's hidden entrances, there are caverns where bioluminescent fungi behave strangely. Most mushrooms simply glow steadily, but here, their light pulses in slow, measured rhythms, brightening and dimming in patterns that resemble breathing. When these pulses align, the cavern becomes a dreamlike chamber of rising and falling light, a soft tide of illumination that feels almost alive. The fungi refuse to glow when brought outside the cavern, and their pulse ceases instantly when harvested. Scholars have attempted to record the rhythm, hoping it matches old chants or forgotten rituals, but the pattern seems to shift too subtly to capture. Some say the fungi pulse in response to footsteps, slowing when someone walks quietly and speeding slightly when they run. Others think the fungi react to emotion or heartbeat. Whatever the reason, the cavern's breathing glow continues to enchant anyone who steps into its warm, living light. And throughout all these places, breathing meadows, pulsing caverns, whispering trees, singing cliffs, Skyrim remains a landscape of quiet, patient mysteries. The world feels alive in ways that slip beyond clear explanation, leaving traces of wonder that wait gently for wanderers who walk slowly, listen deeply, and let the strangeness settle softly into their memory like falling snow. Deep within the western forests of Falkreath, where the pine canopy grows so thick that sunlight breaks through in thin, trembling ribbons, there lies a cluster of stones arranged in a peculiar arc. Each stone stands roughly the height of a seated man, their surfaces etched with faint grooves that resemble claw marks softened by centuries of wind and rain. The stones are spaced perfectly apart, forming an arc wide enough for several travelers to walk beneath. When someone stands at the center of the arc, the forest quiets in a strange, almost reverent way. Birds stop calling, the air stills, even the distant rustle of leaves seems to fade. Some who linger there speak of hearing a low, pulsing tone deep within their chests, a rhythm that does not match their heartbeat but feels ancient and steady, like the slow inhalation of something vast slumbering beneath the soil. When one steps out of the arc, the forest resumes its natural noise as though a spell has quietly broken. North of the volcanic tundra in Eastmarch lies a field of cracked earth where the patterns of the fissures resemble branching tree roots. These fractures spread across the ground in long, delicate lines that intersect and diverge with an odd sense of purpose. The cracks appear to grow slightly each year, shifting subtly in ways noticed only by those who return season after season. Some wanderers report a faint glow emanating from the deepest splits on particularly cold nights, though the glow vanishes when approached. At dawn, the field often steams gently, even when the surrounding land remains frozen. Scholars have attempted to map the fissures and compare them to Old Nord symbols, but the patterns match nothing in any known record. Yet, the branching lines feel meaningful, as if the land is trying to speak through the slow, deliberate shaping of its own fractures. Near the border of High Rock, a quiet meadow hides patches of earth that resonate with gentle vibrations when stepped upon. The vibrating patches are irregular in shape, some small enough for a single footstep, others large enough to cause the ground beneath one's entire body to hum faintly. The sensation is not unpleasant. It feels like standing atop a purring creature or the distant rumble of thunder held deep underground. Animals often gather near these spots, lying down peacefully as though soothed by the vibrations. When rain falls, the hum intensifies for a few minutes before fading again. No one has identified a source for the vibration. It seems neither magical nor mechanical, and yet it persists season after season, humming softly beneath the grass like a whisper meant for the earth alone. In the forest south of Windhelm, a small pond mirrors the sky with such perfect clarity that it appears as a hole cut directly into the world. Even when wind ripples the surrounding foliage, the pond remains perfectly still, its surface unmoving as glass. Snow falls around it, but melts before touching the water. Animals refuse to drink from it, choosing instead the streams that trickle nearby. On some nights, when the auroras stretch across the sky in long veils of light, the pond reflects constellations that do not exist above it, patterns of stars arranged in shapes unfamiliar to Skyrim's skies. Some wanderers swear these constellations shift slowly, as though tracing movements across worlds unseen. When dawn arrives, the water returns to its ordinary appearance, showing nothing but the pale light of morning. Nestled between the rocks near Solitude lies a narrow grotto where moss glows faintly at dusk. The glow is soft, barely enough to illuminate the stone walls, but it spreads evenly across the moss in a pattern that resembles swirling currents of water. When touched, the moss feels warm, even in winter. The warmth never intensifies, but it remains steady and comforting, like embers buried beneath ash. The grotto carries a sweet, earthy scent that lingers on clothing long after leaving. Some who visit report hearing faint melodies drifting through the stones, soft tones that echo in rhythmic waves, taking on the character of a lullaby sung by a distant, unseen voice. No explanations for the warmth or glow have ever been confirmed. The grotto remains a quiet refuge, an untouched pocket of softness, hidden between rugged stone. To the northwest of Riften, where the land dips into a sheltered cove fed by icy waterfalls, a peculiar pattern forms each winter across the frozen water. The ice fractures along thin, intricate lines that spread across the surface like veins. The fractures choose the same paths each year, creating a web-like pattern so delicate and ornate it resembles fine glass artwork rather than a natural break. When moonlight strikes the frozen cove, the fractures glow faintly with reflected light, forming a radiant blueprint across the ice. The pattern remains visible until the thaw, and each spring the cove resets itself, erasing the lines before forming them anew once winter returns. Some believe the fractures mimic the layout of ancient ruins buried beneath the cove's depths. Others whisper that the web of ice follows the shape of old ley lines running beneath the mountains. In the forests between Falkreath and Helgen lies a patch of mushrooms that emit faint clicking noises when disturbed. The clicks vary in pitch depending on the time of day. When sunlight filters through the canopy at midday, the mushrooms click rapidly in sharp tones. At dusk, the noises soften, resembling faint taps or tiny stones striking hollow wood. At night, the clicking ceases entirely, leaving the forest unnervingly silent. Tests on the mushrooms show nothing unusual. They are ordinary fungi in every measurable way. Yet the sound persists only in this one patch of woods, as though the mushrooms are responding to something only they can detect. Travelers occasionally hear the clicking shift into a rhythmic pattern that resembles coded communication, though no one has deciphered any meaning. Some imagine the forest itself speaking through them, the earth using delicate sounds to hint at its hidden language. On the shores of Lake Gear, a stretch of sand produces soft luminescence when stepped upon, Each footprint glows for several moments before fading away, leaving behind faint outlines that shimmer like pale starlight. The glowing footsteps appear only at night, and only when the lake is perfectly calm. When waves roll in, the glow vanishes entirely, replaced by the usual dull sheen of ordinary sand. The luminescence leaves no residue on skin or fur. Those who walk along the shore claim the glow feels warm beneath their feet, as though the sand remembers the touch of every traveler who passes. Some believe the phenomenon is caused by bioluminescent organisms washed in from the depths. Others think the sand carries a subtle enchantment left behind by ancient rituals once performed near the lake. The glowing footprints create a quiet magic, a soft trail of light guiding wanderers along the water's edge. Near the jagged cliffs south of Markarth, a series of cavern entrances emits a faint metallic ringing whenever the wind shifts. The ringing echoes through the stone passages like distant chimes struck by an invisible hand. The sound is subtle, often mistaken for the natural groaning of rock, yet its tone is too precise, clear, sustained, and melodic. Explorers who venture into the caverns report hearing the ringing deepen as they walk, the tones shifting in pitch as though guiding them along unseen pathways. But once inside, the sound fades entirely, leaving only the drip of water and the distant scuttle of insects. Some theorize that thin veins of metal hidden within the rock walls react to temperature changes. Others suspect the ringing echoes originate from deeper, unreachable chambers. Whatever the cause, the caverns continue to hum softly with their mysterious metallic music. In the snow-covered plains north of Dawnstar lies a patch of ice so dark it appears almost black. Unlike the surrounding frost, this ice absorbs light rather than reflecting it, creating a stark, shadowy void that stands out sharply against the white expanse. When the sun strikes the ice, it does not melt. Instead, it remains cold and solid, swallowing the warmth without changing. Those who walk across it feel a tingling sensation beneath their boots, like tiny pulses rising through the soles. At night, the ice sometimes emits a faint red shimmer from beneath its surface, though the glow is so soft it barely illuminates the snow. Some believe the ice trap's ancient magic, sealed deep under the tundra. Others suspect the darkness is simply mineral-rich ice formed under unique conditions. But those who stand upon it too long often report an unsettling feeling, as if something beneath the ice is quietly stirring. And through all these places, black ice, glowing moss, singing cliffs, glass-like ponds, Skyrim continues to reveal mysteries that ask for no answers. The land whispers gently in rhythms too subtle to follow, holding secrets woven into its fields, forests, and frozen shores. These quiet enigmas linger softly through the seasons, waiting patiently for anyone willing to wander without hurry, noticing the strange beauty that rests humbly beneath the surface of an already magical world. In the forests west of Riverwood, where the treetops knit together so tightly that midday looks nearly like dusk, there is a fallen log that refuses to decay. It lies across a shallow ravine, its bark smooth and almost polished despite being older than most trees in the area. Moss grows around it, but never upon it. Snow piles on it, but melts away within minutes, leaving the wood warm and dry even in the depth of winter. The log carries faint grooves along its length, lines too orderly to be scars and too soft-edged to be carvings. Travelers who rest against it often describe an odd sensation of comfort, as if leaning against the shoulder of someone watching over them. Some swear they hear the faint sound of breathing when the forest becomes silent, a slow and steady rhythm that seems to come from within the wood itself. When they press their ear to the surface, the sound vanishes, leaving behind only the dry scent of aged timber and a lingering sense that the log is quietly aware. Northeast of Rorikstead, a sloping field contains a strange cluster of stones, arranged in what appears to be a crude spiral. At a glance, the stones seem randomly placed, scattered by centuries of wind and erosion. But when seen from above, something only cliff climbers, dragons, and a few adventurous mages ever manage, the stones form a perfect spiral that winds inward to a shallow depression at the center. The depression itself holds nothing but short grass and tiny white flowers that bloom even in frost. At night, the spiral's outer stones cast shadows that do not match the direction of the moonlight. Instead, their shadows lean inward, pointing toward the center as though acknowledging a presence unseen. Some farmers in Rorikstead speak of feeling a tugging sensation when they walk near the spiral, a gentle pull in the chest that urges them toward the center. Others avoid the field entirely, saying the spiral reminds them of a snare waiting patiently beneath the earth. Near the eastern banks of Lake Yorgrim lies a small hill where the soil changes color with the seasons, not gradually, but in abrupt shifts that defy normal explanation. In spring, the ground turns a soft lilac shade, faint as flower petals scattered across the earth. In summer, it deepens into a rusty red. In autumn, it brightens to a pale gold, and in winter, it returns to a muted gray. The colors appear evenly across the entire hill, as though some unseen brush paints the soil in broad strokes according to the turning of the year. Plants grow normally on the hill, but their roots never carry the colors upward. Attempts to dig beneath the surface reveal nothing unusual. The colored soil seems to disappear mere inches below the top layer. Locals speculate that the hill rests atop a forgotten burial site, its changes marking the passing of time in some ancient and ceremonial way. Between the crags south of Dawnstar, where the wind funnels through narrow passes with a low, growling rumble, lies a cavern entrance that emanates a persistent chill. Unlike the usual cold of Skyrim's northern mountains, this chill carries a brittle, metallic quality that tightens the air and prickles the skin. Even torches sputter when brought near the entrance, their flames bending unnaturally as if recoiling from something inside. The cavern's floor slopes gently downward, but the strange cold diminishes the deeper one travels. Eventually, a warmth begins to build, subtle at first but unmistakable, like the faint heat that lingers after a candle has been extinguished. No visible source of warmth exists, no geysers, no hot stones, no hidden fires. The deeper chambers contain only smooth rock and dust, as if untouched for centuries. Those who venture inside often leave with the unsettling sense that the cavern breathes, inhaling cold, exhaling warmth, with a rhythm too slow for anything living. North of Hoffingar, upon a cliff overlooking the restless sea, there stands a lone statue weathered beyond recognition. Its features have been eroded by centuries of storms, until only the vaguest outline remains, a tall, slender figure whose head tilts slightly downward, facing the churning waves. Some believe the statue once depicted an ancient warrior, others a forgotten deity. But what makes it remarkable is not its form, but the fact that the area around it never accumulates snow. No matter how fierce the blizzards grow, the patch of ground surrounding the statue remains bare, the stone beneath always exposed. The wind shifts strangely near it, bending around the statue in sweeping arcs instead of striking it directly. Those who stand beside the statue during storms often feel as though they've stepped into a small pocket of calm carved into the chaos, an unspoken shelter offered by a figure whose identity has been swallowed by time. In the highlands of the Reach, where jagged rocks split the sky like broken spears, a narrow ravine hides a waterfall that flows in reverse for a few seconds at dawn. The water surges upward in a smooth, spiraling arc before collapsing back into its natural downward rush. The reverse flow lasts only moments, so brief that many travelers never witness it. But those who camp near the ravine and rise early sometimes see the water lift itself toward the sky as though pulled by invisible threads. The sound changes as well. During those fleeting seconds, the usual roar of falling water replaced by a deep, resonant hum that feels more felt than heard. Some Reachmen claim the waterfall remembers an ancient magical upheaval that once tore the land apart, and each dawn it reenacts the moment when the earth defied its own weight. Beneath a canopy of aspens near Iverstead lies a patch of forest where the leaves shimmer with an odd, metallic sheen. As sunlight filters through the branches, the leaves catch and reflect it in brief flashes of silver and gold, as though coated in thin layers of precious metal. Yet when plucked and examined, the leaves appear completely ordinary, their surfaces soft and flexible like any other. At dusk, the shimmering intensifies, creating an eerie glow that dances across the forest floor. Animals avoid the area during these twilight hours, though insects drift toward the shimmering leaves as if drawn by some unseen lure. Some mages have suggested the trees stand atop a source of lost enchantment, absorbing stray energies that rise from deep beneath the soil. Others believe the shimmer is an illusion cast by the movement of wind and light, though few illusions feel so purposeful. To the south, along the hidden trails leading toward Cyrodiil, lies a clearing where the air carries a faint scent of flowers no longer found anywhere in Skyrim. The aroma is subtle, sweet but unfamiliar, reminiscent of warm summer evenings and memories half forgotten. It drifts through the clearing only during early mornings and late evenings, vanishing entirely during midday. No flowers grow in the clearing, only tall grasses and a few scattered stones. Some travelers claim the scent triggers vivid recollections of childhood, even when the memories have long faded from their waking minds. Others report seeing faint shapes drifting through the grass at dawn, blurs of color that vanish when looked at directly. Scholars have attempted to locate the source of the scent, but found nothing unusual. It remains one of those gentle mysteries that linger softly, offering comfort rather than fear. Between the foothills of Eastmarch and the forests of the Rift, a series of smooth standing stones produce soft echoes even when no sound is made. The stones are arranged in small clusters, each one perfectly rounded and polished, as though shaped by centuries of flowing water, though no river has touched the region in living memory. When someone stands between two stones and closes their eyes, they often hear faint tones that seem to rise from beneath the earth. The tones hum in shifting patterns, aligning themselves with the breath of the listener. Some say the stones sing, their voices soft and patient, forming a melody that lingers in the bones even after leaving. Others believe the echoes are merely acoustic tricks caused by wind, yet even on windless days, the soft tones remain, tied not to weather, but to presence. And as these hidden corners of the world quietly persist, shimmering leaves, breathing caverns, singing stones, and frozen crescents, Skyrim continues to cradle mysteries that neither reveal themselves fully nor hide entirely. The land seems to murmur softly to anyone willing to listen, sharing its ancient secrets in fragments too gentle to disturb and too strange to forget. These enigmas drift through its forests and mountains like wandering spirits, asking nothing more than for travelers to pause and notice the quiet wonders that move between shadows and light.